You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to episode 51 of Making Tracks. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man who looks as good in orange as a bag of Satsumas. Mark, how you doing?
I don't know how to take that. I feel like I should go to a gym or something. Because bag of Satsumas are just like round and squidgy and... Yeah, but they do smell nice.
They do.
I'll take that as a win anyway, because, yeah. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. I'm good. It's busy. There's loads to talk about. We've got a ton of stuff to pile through in this episode. But before we do, last week was our 50th episode. Had lots of thank yous and congratulations and all sorts of stuff. Have you been basking in the glow of a job well done so far?
I think so. I mean, to be honest, I really enjoy this, and I didn't think that I would quite enjoy it as much as I have, which sounds weird because obviously you should only do stuff like this if you enjoy it. Yeah. But it's from somebody who's listened to podcasts since 2010 or 11, I don't know, whenever Celebration 5 was, whenever that was.
2010, yeah.
To actually end up co-hosting one of the greatest podcasts about Star Wars there ever has been is obviously very humbling. But yeah, no, it's been good fun. So is this where I get my marching orders and you bring in a new host?
No, you're glued to the seat, mate. You're going nowhere because we've got loads to talk about, and I want to kick off with the first topic. Kathleen Kennedy did an interview with The Wrap, and she talked about a lot of stuff, and we've been posting stuff on the site because there was a lot to unwrap in there, a lot to unpack. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and it's a topic that we have discussed recently on the show, but it's worth coming back to given the slightly different frame from which we're looking at it now. Obi-Wan Kenobi series, it wasn't ever sort of clarified whether it would be a 1 season, a 2 season, what the plan was, but now in a single line she basically says it's a limited series, which kind of indicates that you're probably looking at sort of 4 to 6 episodes, very much taking the movie that we all knew was due to come but was put on the back burner after Solo not doing so well, and being turned into a TV project. So given that it's a one-off limited mini-series, 2 questions. 1, do you think that's going to benefit the show? And 2, what other sort of Star Wars projects do you think could play off the back of it? First question, do you think it's going to work for this Kenobi project?
It all comes down to story at the end of the day, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Interestingly, the girlfriend's been watching... I think it's The Fall on Netflix, which is a very slow and ploddy police drama type thing.
The Gillian Anderson thing?
It is, yeah. It is with Gillian Anderson. Karen's kind of said, the first 2 series were really good, but oh my God, I can't wait for this 3rd season to finish. And so in some respects, it's better to have a concise story that is wrapped up and actually probably, it's left us wanting more.
Yeah.
Rather than it run on and on and on. And it gets to a point where we're just like, we know where it's going to go. He's going to meet Luke and go off to Alderaan and die on the Death Star. Yeah. For me personally, I'm quite looking forward to actually having, hopefully, it's going to obviously be longer than a film, which my guess or my hope anyway would be if it's the low end, if it's only 4 episodes, they're at least 45 minutes long, maybe longer. So then you've got a 3-hour or maybe a 4-hour plus story, which is more than you would get for a standalone film. So that in itself is good. If it's obviously a few more episodes, so 6 or even 8, then that's great, as long as the story deserves it and they expand it. Because I'm guessing what they've done is they've taken that original screenplay and they've looked at it and said, where can we maybe expand it, or maybe where can we go off in different avenues? So as long as it's good and as long as it's executed well and it keeps us gripped and it keeps us engaged, I think it's fine. I guess also if you lock in, the 4 or 6 episodes, it's probably a lot more of an easier thing to kind of pin down people like Ewan McGregor who possibly don't want to get tied into an ongoing series, because probably want to actually go back to movies. At least then there's that schedule aspect that you can deal with. But also, I guess, just because it's this series is limited, it doesn't mean that if it's really good and it's really well received, like The Mandalorian, that they turn around and say, you know what, let's do another one. Let's maybe do another Kenobi series, but let's spend some time, let's spend a couple of years writing it so it doesn't come out straight away. That's my kind of thoughts on it anyway. What about yours?
It is a unique scenario where, if I'm correct, I think this is set about 13 years before Star Wars. But let's say it's 10 years before A New Hope. Who knows where we're going to be in 10 years' time? So in 10 years' time, there could be another story that's still 3 years before A New Hope. And Ewan McGregor will be the right age. He'll be 60 in 10 years' time. So right age to play Obi-Wan at a time just before that original Star Wars. And they could do another miniseries. You know, there's another story that needs telling that would be just perfect for them to do. So I think with the Kenobi story, taking that film project, thickening it out a bit, adding in other characters to give you other alternate storytelling avenues. And that's something we talked about recently. You know, with all these TV projects, it's not going to work if it's just focused on Obi-Wan. And it's just Obi-Wan, like I say, sitting with his hood up, looking over the sand dunes at Luke playing by the homestead. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
If he is going off planet, if he is doing other things, or if it is still all on Tatooine, but there's other characters sort of swimming around, the Lars family and Luke can interact with, and you know what I mean? There's just other stuff going on. There's a potential for seeing a young Biggs and the Darklighter family, and there's just other things that you could kind of filter in. So there's more meat on the bone. To tell this Kenobi story, get that done. He made a great point about Ewan. You know, you think, well, he's going to, you know, he's just done Birds of Prey, which should have been a way bigger hit than it was. But, you know, he's going back to big movies. But he also likes doing his TVs. He did Fargo for a season, didn't he? And that went down really well.
That's right.
You know, so he likes to sort of mix it up a bit. It kind of works in that sense. And then you think, well, if that's a hit, on one hand, the logical brain thinks that they're going to be going straight back to him and going, well, pay you double to do another season. That's not the way to do it. What they should do is go, brilliant, fantastic, thank you, Ewan, we'll see him in 10 years' time, nod and a wink. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. You know, and he's all good because everybody goes their separate ways on good terms, and he turns up at celebrations and everybody's happy, and that works in that very positive sense. You know, there's more time in the timeline to tell stories down the road. Disney then come away, and Lucasfilm, more Lucasfilm than Disney, but I say Disney because obviously this could work for Marvel as well, that Lucasfilm come away and go, well, now we've done it. We're not tied to movies specifically, or the movie format of a 2.5 hour story. We're not tied to something like, for example, The Mandalorian, which is completely created to sit in a timeline, but to be a sort of sequential season 1, season 2, season 3 and on type scenario. They can go, you know, if we want to tell, I don't know, pick something out of thin air, I don't know, we want to tell the story of the Battle of Tanab, right? That legendary story that gets mentioned in Return of the Jedi, and we want to get Donald Glover in to film a 6-part mini-series, you know, summer event on Disney Plus. Lando Calrissian, the Battle of Tanab, and they tell that story of how he pulled all these people together and won this amazing battle and blah, blah, blah. And it's a one-off story. Then surely for Disney, it's like, well, it's another sort of IP that they can spin off in merchandising and do comics about or whatever. It gives them loads of opportunities now. I think it's more about breaking the format of it's either a multi-series TV show or it's a movie. Or even more to the point, and Kathleen Kennedy said it, we kind of want to get away from doing trilogies. Not that they don't like trilogies, not that there's anything wrong with trilogies, but it is the Star Wars format, is the trilogy, isn't it? You know, and they want to try something different.
And that's the thing. There's also, you look at just about most trilogies, there is a format to it. You have the establishing first act, then you have the second act, which is, you know,
your
slightly darker, Empire Strikes Back, your cliffhanger, and then you have the resolution in the third one. And so overall, narrative storytelling has similar beats, and it doesn't matter if you condense it into like a 1 hour show or over 3 films. Star Wars has always been tied to the trilogy, and up until, you know, the sequel trilogy, that made sense. Now that is kind of wrapped up and done and dusted, I think it's a good decision to start looking at, well, okay, sod it, let's make it just 4 episodes, or let's make it, you know, 2 or 3 seasons. Going to shoot 20 episodes concurrently, but we're going to release them over the course of 3 years. There's loads of different ways you could do it. And I guess, I mean, but I think it just kind of comes down to, as long as the story is there, as long as the story is not necessarily what we want or what we need, because I don't think we ever really need specific stories per se.
Yeah.
But as long as it's good and it's engaging, and we don't feel as fans that it's been phoned in or it's compromising too much on retconning canon and stuff like that, I think everybody's going to just appreciate it. On the flip side, they have to find, I think, a good balance between how much is enough Star Wars and how much is too much. Because if we start getting into that too much, which I think we talked about last week, that's when people start to kind of, slightly switch off a little bit, but also get complacent and take it for granted. And to me anyway, and clearly I'm as biased as like you are, Star Wars should never be taken for granted. It should be a big event and we should look forward to it and get excited by it and lose sleepless nights over waiting for trailers and everything else to land.
You're totally right. I think the thing about Star Wars, when Star Wars is timed right, it really is more exciting than waiting for Christmas.
Yeah.
But when there's too much content, and like you say, there's so much now across every spec. I was just thinking about it the other day. The amount of books that are coming out, the amount of and now I've started finally listening to the audiobooks and really enjoying it. And we'll talk about that on the next episode of Cannon Fighter. How much I listened to Afra and Dooku and enjoyed them both. And back to talking
it's
to Alphabet
Squadron. It's about time.
It really is about time. So, so there's, if you're into that, then there's acres and acres of that to listen to. And the same with the books and the same with the comics and the non-fiction stuff and Hasbro stuff and toys, which we'll talk about shortly. Just so many things. So there can be too much. And of course, you don't have to get it all. You don't have to listen to it all or read it all or any of it. You just pick and choose what you want. But if you're into it, you kind of want to absorb as much as you can. But the point being is that, it needs to feel like an event. Weirdly, when they said about this being when Kathleen Kennedy said about this being a limited series, it kind of reminded me of when they were promoting, and not in the UK because we got it at the cinema, Caravan of Courage in the States. When you read it in Bantha Tracks and such, it was like, it's an ABC movie event, and it was an event. That was kind of the pitch for what it was. This is an event. And in 1984, it was like, you're getting Star Wars on the television. They'd only just started showing Empire on the telly in 84. Let alone Star Wars had been on since 82. Jedi was still, 3 years away from hitting video and television. So it was a monumental thing. And of course, they do Ewoks and droids and the marketplace and life moves on. But I think with this, not just being great for Kenobi as a story, because it's in and done and out and wrapped up in a bow, and then we can park it for, like, I'm picking 10 years as a silly number, but they could, or they might get 5 years down the road and go, hey, Ewan, fancy doing another one? That went really well. Do you want to do another one?
Yeah.
And if he has a good experience, he'll be like, yeah, I'll do another one. But it just seems to work as a sort of a template for other Star Wars storytelling that breaks the mold.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So speaking about possibly too much or not enough Star Wars, in particular Star Wars toys, for Hasbro Pulse Fan First Friday, and let's be fair, try and say that 3 times fast or even twice slightly slower like I've tried to do. There's been some more reveals from the lovely people over at Hasbro. Let's walk you through it. Mark, where do you want to start?
Let's start at the top. They're finally releasing a Hondo Anaka figure on Vintage Collection card back, so very much looks like the old school card. Everyone loves Hondo. I mean, we got him in the Clone Wars, he came back in Rebels, he's now part of Galaxy's Edge. It's the perfect time to release him as a figure, and it looks awesome. I've already put my order in with Mr. Booker for this one. I'm all over this. I'm looking forward to getting
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm going to be pre-ordering him. But it's also interesting that they've released him, and he was part of the exclusive figures with the new Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, the Smuggler's Run Falcon.
That's right, yeah. I was quite surprised that they've going to release him so early. I would have thought they would have tried to milk that a little bit. I mean, because I know there were some people I spoke to who weren't massively fussed about the Falcon, but they wanted the Hondo figure, so they put down the 400 quid or however much it was to get that. So I don't know if they've still got their receipts and they want to return it, but
I'll take it off their hands. I'll take
exactly.
That Falcon off their hands.
What I'm going to suggest is I'm going to buy them a Hondo Anako figure and see if they want to do a straight swap.
Only seems
yeah, totally. But yeah, I mean, he looks great. Whenever you see him, he's got that really cheeky kind of smug smile, but also seems to work when he's posed with a blaster. It's like he's slightly determined. I think Hondo Anaka is definitely one of those more original figures to have been part of a Star Wars TV pantheon in the last few years. Yeah. So I'm really happy to finally be able to kind of get him on the vintage card. Carrying on with the vintage collection, a bit like the Bespin Carbon Freezing Chamber, they are releasing the Tantive 4 hallway playset.
This is nuts. I mean,
it's amazing.
It's phenomenal. It really looks the business. If you've got the room, and it isn't enormous, it's a nice size, so it is doable. You can get this set up. It looks, I mean, we put a whole gallery on the site, the links in the show links. It looks amazing.
It looks really cool, and it's, again, a bit like what they've done with the Bespin Freezing Chamber. You can buy a few of them and you can kind of connect them all together. That's quite cool because it means that you can kind of scale it to the space you've got. And it's like fairly affordable. It's like $50, so it's not a huge expense in the grand scheme of things. The Rebel Fleet Troopers they're actually kind of selling on eBay for about the same price as well. So that's the only downside. If you haven't got many and you want to kind of start building a diorama, try and get in there quick before they all sell out.
They sort of say it's Rogue One inspired Rebel Fleet Trooper, which is a nice touch. And you see him in his classic helmet that you see at the start of A New Hope, but also in the flat cap as well. So that does look very cool.
I think I might just get this because, as you know, as you've seen, Elstree Base has got part of a Tantive Wall set, so I might just get this just to compare notes and see if I can get some inspiration for doing the doorway or something. But it looks great. Definitely a welcome addition, I think, to the Vintage Collection line. Good
to mix it up, and like you say, you can get your figures in there, get that set up as a diorama, it'd just look amazing. Speaking of Rogue One, they're releasing a Rogue One Darth Vader figure. Mm-hmm. So obviously the armour for Vader in Rogue One is slightly different to A New Hope. There's slight tweaks, which is fine because, you see Vader in his vat in Rogue One. You know that he's sort of being renewed and rebuilt all the time. So it's a bit like the Mando armour, isn't it? From The Mandalorian when he's adding Beskar, you kind of think, well, there's different chest plates for Vader, different bits and bobs. It makes sense. So in this figure, again, when you look at the gallery on Fantha, the detail on it is incredible.
Absolutely. The detailing of the sculpting looks great. Again, they've kind of really emphasised those red lenses that they seem to like doing in the kind of like the post-Star Wars Rebels kind of era. It is quite curious to think. I mean, obviously there was a different kind of Vader costume for Revenge of the Sith, and you could kind of understand that. But bearing in mind that Rogue One does literally run into the back of A New Hope, you kind of would have thought that the costume would have been as close to the original as possible. Maybe that's just me being a little bit OCD, because you kind of think that he's not really probably going to have had time to kind of swap any kind of components over between him trying to capture the plans and then actually when he does finally meet Princess Leia. But hey, another Vader figure on another card back. Some people have been kind of grumbling that they could have released a different figure, but I mean, I think Vader's kind of like one of the most, if not the most iconic figures that you can get. So it's quite cool to have him on the Rogue One card.
They're also releasing some figure packs, 5-packs. To kick off, we look at the Jedi Order 5-pack. So you've got Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Anakin, and Yoda, along with an R7A7 astromech droid as well. What do you think to these? They look pretty cool. They're nice looking sets.
I think so, yeah. I mean, and they're priced really reasonable. I mean, per pack anyway. There's 5 packs and they're $30 each. Yeah. So that's going to cost a little bit, all in all. I think it's quite a fun thing to do. Have like a First Order pack, the Galactic Empire. This is the thing. They've gone for the very obvious characters, for the tentpole characters. So you've got Luke, Leia, and Han about for the Rebel Alliance. But it would have been quite nice to have almost like a generic pack. So again, like a Fleet Trooper, an X-Wing pilot, an Endor Trooper, something like that. So it's kind of not just necessarily the main characters.
I'm looking at the Galactic Empire pack, like you say, it's mostly armour. So it's a Sand Trooper, a Biker Scout, Snow Trooper, TIE Fighter pilot, and then they drop in the R2Q5, which I think was an R2Q5 done as Sphero as well, wasn't it? A limited edition Sphero they did for
Yes,
that.
Yeah.
So they are sort of dropping them in, and with the Sith pack, I know there's been a bit of talk about that. People are saying, well, was Kylo Ren in the Sith pack? Because Kylo Ren wasn't, strictly speaking, a Sith, but maybe that's picking hairs a little bit. But obviously, as you say, you've got Kylo, you've got Vader, Darth Maul, Palpatine, and then TC4, the TC4 protocol droid, the red protocol droid. So they are sort of mixing it up a little bit. That's the lure, isn't it? That's the pull.
I guess basically what they've done is they've stuck Kylo in the Sith pack, because then of course you can have a slightly more fleshed out First Order pack.
Yeah,
it's quite nice, and I think those are really good. Their price point's really competitive, so that's obviously these are going to be kind of slightly aimed towards younger collectors. These are perfect gifts to buy younger children who are possibly only getting into Star Wars now, because if you get Resistance pack, you've got everybody pretty much. You've got Poe, Rey, Finn, and 3PO, and BB-8. Oh, and the Porg.
And the Porg. Don't forget the Porg.
Exactly. Can't forget the Porg. And then, of course, you can't have the Empire and the good guys and then forget the bounty hunters. So you've got a nice bounty hunters pack, which includes Django and Boba Fett. So that's quite cool. I'm going to get these because they'll probably stack up quite well, actually, and display pretty nicely. So, but basically just a standard 3 3/4 inch 5 points of articulation. That's fine, but playability is still there, so it's definitely worth buying, I think.
I agree. I think the same as you as well. I think these will stack up nicely, and I think these look more like display rather than play, if that makes sense. I mean, like I say, it's a great option if you want to get 5 figures for $30. That's a great deal in anyone's book. But and I think for collectors, they've just, the packaging is nice to celebrate the Saga logo, makes sense. And also, I'm looking at the Galactic Republic 5-pack. 5 First Legion Trooper, Phase 1 Clone Trooper, Shock Trooper, Commander Cody, and OOM-10 from the Clone Wars. So it's a nice mix of characters.
Personally, then, as a collector, would you prefer this, or would you have preferred under the Celebrate Saga banner, a 5-pack per film?
I quite like these. Separating it into factions like they have, if you like, sort of makes sense. And again, I think, just dropping in that one not obvious figure makes it attractive. But I think the packaging works, and I just think the look of it works. I get why they're doing it. For kids, if you want to buy a nice, reasonably priced pack that your kids can rip open and they've got 5 figures for $30, or in the UK, 5 figures for 30 quid probably, it's still a good deal. And if you're a collector, there's not that many packs that you need to get to have them all. So exactly. I do think it works. It's not a bad idea. I do get where some of the criticisms come from, because obviously everybody wants everything, and that's understandable. And it still feels like the Rise of Skywalker is being sold a little bit short in terms of figures, to say the least.
Yeah, very much.
That's been overlooked, and there's obviously reasons for it. We posted on the site over the weekend that the little golden books are only just on, as this episode comes out today on the 25th, is only just releasing their little golden book adaptation of the Rise of Skywalker, getting on for a year since the film came out. So there's all these little gaps that are getting filled, which seems odd. There's obviously reasons why these things have happened. Beyond COVID, it doesn't feel like that's the reason.
Again, like looking at the Rebel Alliance figures, you've got Jedi Luke, but Han and Leia are both from Empire. So I don't know. I suppose it makes sense. You pair them all up. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. Definitely on the wish list, I think.
Same. They're returning to the Force Effects series with the Emperor Palpatine Force Effects Elite lightsaber, $224.99 in dollars, probably comparable in pounds, sadly. Available in the autumn. What do you think to this? It looks lush.
It does, but also, I don't know.
It's not lighting you up.
It's not lighting me up. And the reason why is only because I think that depending on how it actually looks properly in the flesh, this could either look really good or it could just look really cheap and tacky and plasticky. I don't know. There's just something about some of those photos where I'm just like, I don't know if that's just like some kind of render or something, if that's the actual product photos. It's not massively doing it for me. And the things I really do like the Darth Sidious Palpatine kind of lightsaber hilt. I think it's quite cool, and it's kind of unique and very much apropos to the character.
Yeah.
Not grabbing me so much, this one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I suppose you can think, if you went down the list of sabres that you would expect or anticipate to come out, and we just mentioned Rise of Skywalker, you think Rey Sentinel sabre at the very end of the film feels like something that would make sense, or Leia's sabre.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people I know are really desperate for a Leia saber, and the Rey fans are very desperate for like Rey's saber and stuff. It is one of those things you don't necessarily see this the Palpatine kind of like hilt very often. It's not one that's kind of like been done. I think it's been done for Master Replicas. I think I've got it up as one of the mini kind of scaled ones. Yeah. So it has been done before, but it's not something that gets repeatedly done. So it's it creates a bit of variation. So, and variation is good.
Variation is good. And as we come to the end of the Hasbro reveals, a couple of things from the Black Series. There has to be a couple of things from the Black Series. The Phase 1 Clone Trooper Lieutenant figure, $19.99, 20 quid in the UK, available in the autumn. And also, which this I really am interested in this, the Black Series 6-inch gaming grates, the Electrostaff Purge Trooper from Fallen Order, which looks fantastic. So either of those grab you at all?
Yeah, I've been buying the gaming grates figures. I think they are great, funnily enough. And yeah, the Electrostaff Purge Trooper from Fallen Order, I think, if memory serves correctly, he was a bit of a pain in the arse to defeat a couple of times. So I will quite happily relish the fact I'm going to get him and stick him in a cupboard and then forget about him. He looks great. I think it's cool. There's, it's got some wicked poses there. And the staff looks kind of mean and menacing. So it's a nice figure. And black and purple always, I think, works really well as a colour scheme anyway. So if the packaging is really attractive.
Yeah, Yeah, it really is. I haven't got any of the gaming greats yet, but I have got the 2 white box figures from Fallen Order that came out back on Force Friday, so I'm quite keen to get that. And the Phase 1 Clone Trooper from Attack of the Clones. As we're heading towards the 20th anniversary of that film in a couple of years' time, it's a good time for that to come out. So that's a nice looking figure as well. Yeah, so all in all, for the Hasbro reveals from Hasbro Pulse Fan First Friday, what do you think? Pretty good mix?
We've commented before that the last couple of Hasbro reveals have been fairly heavily Black Series centric. So this has kind of readdressed the balance a little bit in, I wouldn't say in favour of the 3 3/4 line, but it's like I said, it's addressing it. And actually, coming back to the conversation we had at the top of the show about like how much is too much, where do you think in terms of the number of reveals? Because since I've come on to the podcast, we've had 3 or 4 of these kind of Hasbro reveals. Do you think that they're getting the quantity and the amount of products they're previewing right, or do you think it's a little bit too much?
I think it's about right. I think you can. I mean, everyone's wallet is limited. I mean, there's always the collectors who try and get everything. There's a lot of collectors who have their focuses. I think Hasbro are in such a difficult situation. It's probably been made worse since Toys R Us went under as well. Getting the stuff to market, making sure people are getting what they want, and whatever they release, honestly, whatever they release. I mean, over the next couple of years, you think there'll be Bad Batch stuff coming, there'll be stuff from Kenobi coming, there'll be stuff from Cassian coming, and then you're looking towards the film the year after that, and all of a sudden there's all these different elements and things that they've got to release. And right now, we've just mentioned, there's no Rey lightsaber, there's no Leia lightsaber. There's figures that haven't come out that people are screaming for. So whatever Hasbro do, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. I think with these Celebrate the Saga packs, I can see the logic of them, but I've already seen criticism online. Some of it warranted, some of it not, depending on your point of view, of course. Yeah, it's tricky. I think it's about right. There's a lot of plates to spin. I mean, practical stuff as well. They've got to get the things made. There's only so many factories around the world that produce these things now, so they've got to pick and choose. And a lot of what comes out, you would imagine, isn't necessarily determined by Hasbro. It's probably determined by Disney. So, because Disney are not just looking at toys, they're looking at all the other stuff that folds into it. So Disney may want to put focus on a character. They decide that let's put a focus on, pick a character, Momo Nadon, let's say, because there might be there might be a Hammerhead book coming out or something. You know what I mean? There's different things that they've got to think about. So you've also got to take that into account. But no, I think they're doing it pretty much on the nose. And things like Fan Force Friday, it is kind of interactive. It's a live stream. You can sit down and watch it. They're kind of encouraging you to give your thoughts. I do know they're very open to what people are suggesting and what people are saying within the boundaries of what they can do. It's not a wish list thing, that they are limited in what they can do, but as far as they can, they listen. So not that many companies have to do that, but the ones that do, there's not that many companies that do that. So I think hats off to Hasbro for sort of being open in that respect to what fans are clamouring for and wanting, because of course at the end of the day, it's a business and they've got to sell toys. They don't want to make peg warmers. Who does? Nobody does. So, there's got to be balances on both sides. But no, I think it's about right.
Yeah, I guess the problem that they have, and possibly even Disney has to an extent, is that there's new fans coming in all the time, so therefore there's new collectors coming in all the time. Yeah. So I guess, there's got to be the availability of your Darth Vaders, of your Lukes and all that fairly readily, because at the end of the day, those are the characters that most new collectors will probably want. Yes, obviously that makes it a little bit frustrating for, the seasoned collectors who have got every single iteration of Vader and every single iteration of Princess Leia and all that. But I suppose, as Hasbro has to kind of, like you said, they've got to cast their net as wide as they possibly can, cater for the collectors where possible, but also don't close it off to the new collectors who are coming in going, well, I want a ROTJ Luke, Black Series. I've got to spend 60 quid on eBay because there hasn't been one released for like 4 years or something. Yeah. I mean, I'm quite happy with how it's going. And I think, like I said, because because I am just only a 3 3/4 inch collector, really, with the exception of a few kind of Black Series here and there. This release is kind of, is a little more promising than what I think a lot of people were feeling as definitely doom and gloom for the vintage collection, a couple of months ago. So I just guess we'll wait and see what other beauties are going to get released at the end of this year.
You're listening to Fantha Tracks. Flip through the galaxy of literature with Cannon Fodder hosts Brian Cameron, Matt Booker, Mark Newbold, and Mark Mulcaster.
Count me in.
Spin round the rim with Desert Planet Discs. Your musical journey through the space lanes with your hosts, Carl Bayless and Greg Robertson.
The hottest tunes this side of Mos Eisley.
Get the latest news, interviews, reviews, and much more on Making Tracks with your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
Like an Ewok battle wagon out of control.
Join hosts Claire Henry and a rotating panel of guest hosts for the podcast that's full of hope. Planet Leia.
I love you.
I know.
It's time to head south with the Fantha from Down Under, Adam O'Brien.
Oh, g'day, mate. How you going?
Start your engines with Paul Naylor and Mark Newbold as they lift the hood on starships, airspeeders, swoops, capital ships, and more from across the cosmos. And for everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
ForceFest takes place this coming weekend, 28th to the 30th of August. Making Tracks is part of the show. We're doing a panel on the 29th of August at 10:30 Pacific time, which I think for us is about 6:30 in the evening, UK time, if I'm correct. So we are talking about, it's Empire Strikes Back 40th. We thought we'd stick with what we know, mainly from the UK perspective, I would imagine, but also we thought we'd give it some kind of focus. So we're going to talk about the comics run from Empire through to Jedi. So that's a lot of ground to cover in an hour, and we won't cover all of it, but we'll touch on as much as we can. And the reason this seemed like such a good thing to talk about is that we're coming at it from two perspectives. I read them back in the day when I was a kid, so they're very dear to my heart, and I haven't read them for years, so it'll be fun to go back to them. But you've never read them, have you?
No, much to my sin, and I'm sure there's people who are going, "Oh my God, Mulcaster, how can you not have read them?" But just from my age and stuff, I missed them. And the Marvel Star Wars comics are one of those things that gets referred to, now and again by various people and stuff. I've never had a chance to sit down and just kind of go, right, I'm going to read them, because there's always, there's new Marvel comics and there's Dark Horse comics and there's Expanded Universe and then, everything else. It had to take something like this for me to go, right, okay, I'm going to have to sit down and read them. And I'm looking forward to it because I heard your amazing interview with Walt Simonson for Empire 40, and that's where it really sparked my interest, because I was like, well, actually, this is an era of Star Wars, of fandom and collecting that is kind of almost unique. It's not influenced really by anything else as such. It's purely original trilogy, even before they knew what the original trilogy was. I think it's going to be quite fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it because, like you say, when we were kids, we didn't have weekly TV shows. We didn't have much of anything. We had the novels. We had the read-along books, turn the page on R2 beeps, that sort of thing. We had the Palatoy figures. And we had these magazines, these comics, which were weekly and then became monthly. So this was our ongoing Star Wars storyline as kids, and very much a key part of what Star Wars is, really. So it's going to be fun talking about them again, and it'll be really interesting to see what makes you interested, and we'll probably lead it via that, what sort of catches your eye, what makes you think, oh, that's kind of cool, or that was awful, because some of it's awesome, some of it's like really awesome, some of it's really not. So it's a nice mix. It's an interesting mix. That's a polite way of putting it. But that's what I love about Star Wars, you see. I don't want all Star Wars to be prime fillet. I like Star Wars to have its ups and downs, and I very much sort of take the rough with the smooth, because that's life, isn't it? But still, that totally is. I've said this before. I'm pretty sure I saw the Star Wars films before I saw the Ewok and Droids cartoons, but I can really only vividly remember watching the Ewoks and Droids cartoons. So I don't know, I'm pretty sure that probably was actually my first real look at Star Wars. I guess in some respects it's up there with like somebody's first experience of Star Wars being the holiday special or something like that. Yeah. I mean, I suppose actually if that's the case, then there's it can only get better. But but that's it. I mean, it's funny actually because I spoke to a friend the other day. We were talking about The Phantom Menace. Yeah. I said, I don't know if it was because I had sat and I'd read all the expanded universe novels up to that point, but I didn't go in with massive expectations about, and I don't know if it was because of like Waru or if it was because of like, Children of Jedi or like, Crystal Star and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you read them and you kind of went, okay, well, that was okay, or that was interesting, or that was a bit weird. But you didn't feel like, even though you'd spent £15 on a book, you didn't suddenly feel like you had to throw your toys out the pram and you had to kind of go, oh my God, this isn't Star Wars, this is the worst thing ever. And rah. You just kind of got on with it and went, okay, well, there's something else coming. So let's look forward to that.
Totally agree. When you get really, 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 really good stuff, it stands out above all the other stuff and everyone gets excited. And like I say, it's the ups and downs. And I think you'll find this when you read that Marvel run. Some of it was like, why didn't they do more with this? This should be a mini-series, funny enough, like the Obi-Wan thing. There's things in this you'll go, this should have been more than it was. And then there's other things that are a bit like, ooh, okay, I get the influences for that, not the best. But talk about it on ForceFest when we do the panel next week. We're going to be focusing on the Marvel UK versions as well, not the American numberings. It'll be the UK, it'll be the weeklies and the monthlies and stuff like that. So you'll have some fun with that, but we're looking forward to that one. Should be fun.
I'm Gareth Edwards, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks Radio.
So, episode 51 comes to a close with a slam like a massive dungeon door at Jabba's palace. But for those of you who want to find out more or get in contact or just leave a review, Mark will be able to tell you how and where and why and when you can do it.
That's exactly what I'm going to do right now. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe. Leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And we did actually get a review this week. It was from Rural Farm Boy. He says, this show's on point concerning what's what, separates news from rumours, trust what's heard here, recommended listening, Rural Farm Boy. So thank you, Rural Farm Boy. Very kind of you to give us that review. How cool is that?
It is. Yeah, it's nice.
And also, something that we should have been doing for all the episodes, and we haven't. And from now on, I'm going to do this every episode. We'll give a shout out and a thank you to James Semple, who composed the intro music, the Fantha Tracks intro music you hear at the very top of the show, to Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, which he edited, and Mark Dandler and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. So thank you, guys. We'll give you a shout out every episode, which we should have done since the year dot. Mark, thank you again. Episode 51 is in the history books. We'll do it again next week, I think.
Looking forward to it, my friend. You take care.
And you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Desert Planet Discs.